Hi, everyone. I am Vince Scheib, and on remote, we've got Josh.
Hey there.
All right. We are going to talk about Fugu. So just a quick thing, if you haven't heard the Fugu code name before, it's kind of a cute little thing. Fugu is a delicacy, but it needs to be treated with special care, and that's inherent to some of what we do. So it starts with a really just a drive and a motivation. Web apps should be powerful enough to accomplish any tasks the users have. This is something that we've heard from engineering leadership in Chrome, and many of us share this sentiment, and it's shared across multiple companies as well. So this is a sort of a program or an effort where multiple companies contribute, multiple teams throughout Chrome. And I also want to highlight that this has been an ongoing motivator and goal for many years, more than 15. Google Gears launched in 2007, and it brought offline support and other capabilities needed by some of the web applications that Google wanted to succeed at the time. And this was before Chrome launched. The Chrome team was even formed, and some of those people came into Chrome as well. And in Chrome, we helped push the web forward. That was one of the things we wanted to do, was make sure that the web could live up to its full potential. I personally joined around the time that HTML5 was making a lot of news and enabling a lot more applications in itself. At that time, we also did Chrome extensions, and we did a thing called Chrome apps, which were sort of off the web, but they enabled applications on Chromebooks and using web technologies. And from that, we then pivoted again to driving onto the web platform. And the term PWA was formed from that same core working group that was driving things. And around 2018, we rebranded to the term Fugu that we know and love today. It's definitely the best mascot of the whole line.
And you can really think of what we're trying to do with Fugu as letting the user, through powerful advanced web apps, take advantage of the capabilities of their device, whether it's provided directly by the device hardware, maybe in the form of sensors or low-level peripheral APIs like Bluetooth or USB, or things like the ability for cameras through hardware to do barcode detection, or even take advantage of the GPU on devices. These might also be integrations with the operating system, which provides a file system, clipboards, the ability to open windows or access fonts that users have installed locally. And even in previous iterations might have been called the Extensible Web Manifesto, looking at capabilities that the browser already has and uses to do things like text rendering and layout, and look at exposing those to the web for web applications to use directly. These would be things like compression APIs, low-level transport controls, and so on. Next slide. And so since we kicked off Fugu in about 2018, we've been making investments in a large number of areas. And this is by no means just the team that Vince and I are on, but teams throughout Google and with partners at companies like Intel and Microsoft. Focused on a lot of different areas, from like files and file system, with Microsoft recently landing some work that enabled custom clipboard formats so that web apps and native apps can safely exchange data. We've done a lot of work on my team on the file system API, giving powerful web apps like Photoshop on the web the ability to manipulate files and deal with massive files by literally making their own swap files, like they've been doing on native platforms for decades. I mentioned barcode recognition. Cameras also have the ability to control their tilt and zoom, and that's some functionality that Intel worked on bringing to the web. And Microsoft also recently landed an eyedropper API, just being able to pick pixels on the screen. There's a need for creativity apps. Multi-screen is something the web didn't have. The ability for example, in a slideshow, to click present and have your speaker notes show up on one screen, but the presentation show up on another. We've been continuing to push forward with low-level APIs. USB and Bluetooth shipped years ago, and we've been continuing to iterate on those and rounding out those with support for input devices. And Meet recently shipped support for call control using the HIT API. And then on the networking side of things, our friends in the networking team worked on low-level transport APIs. And this allows the equivalent of UDP for the web, which is critical for some responsive web applications, and exposing the compression APIs already used in the browser for literally unzipping data. And now websites can use that directly. We can also talk about PWAs, which means a lot of things, but I think a lot of people use it as shorthand for being able to take a web app and install it like a native application. And for the user, this has the benefit of it's now integrated with their operating system. They can launch it, see it in the dock, Alt-Tab to it, and it has all of those affordances of native app. And so while that support has been in desktop and mobile for years, we've been continuing to push forward there on deeper integration with the operating system, such as shortcut lists launchable by right-clicking on the taskbar icon, or being able to register to handle file types so that you can right-click on an image file and open it up in your web-based editor of your choice. And also Windows Control Overlay, or Window Controls Overlay, which our friends at Microsoft landed recently, and we'll show you some pictures of that in a moment.
So let's go over some of what happened since the last BlinkOn. In roughly the last 6 months, we can kick it off with Chrome 100. We had quite a few things in the list there. Starting off with the multi-screen window placement API. There's a lot of details to that one, so you'll see it as a recurring theme through these releases, but we started off with getting just information about the displays and being able to position windows. We added a settings page for web applications, and HID got enterprise policy. NFC got the ability to lock a tag after it had been written to and make it read-only, and we did some refinements on some of the other device APIs.
In the web audio space, for both pro audio creation tools and teleconferencing apps, it's critical to know the actual time delay between when some code is generating some audio and when it's actually going to come out of the speaker. So an incremental addition to the web audio API provides that. I mentioned file handling, which allows an installed PWA to handle different file types, so you can use your favorite web-based editor. But also in the file space, we, and this is a multi-year effort, in conjunction between my team and the team in Munich, working closely with the WebAssembly team to provide extremely low-level access to files. You can think of basic POSIX file calls. And this is a way for, again, powerful web applications like Adobe to have very, very high performance access to files for implementing things like custom swap files or replacing web-based database APIs with choose your own database API and bring it to the web via WebAssembly.
In 103, we had a pretty big one. Local font access was something that we spent quite some time working on, and it enables very significant applications. One of the large acquisitions this year was a design product called Figma by Adobe. It was a very high value acquisition, and what set Figma apart from the rest of the competition is that it was web first. Now, they have a lot of usage in Electron, and on the web, the offering is a little bit less for a design tool, especially because it needs access to the local fonts on the system. If you're doing design work, you need those. So this one had a significant security and privacy design process. It took us a while to get there, but we did, and so we're very proud of that one. We also had some additional refinements on gamepad and serial port.
We've done a lot of work over the last several milestones on multi-screen window placement, just being able to enumerate what screens are connected. And then how does a website take advantage of those? Well, one thing that you need to be able to do from a presentation tool is literally with one click on the main app, launch a pop-up and then have it go full screen and have it be a seamless experience. And so that's part of a series of enhancements that we've been making to the multi-screen window placement API. I mentioned the pickling or custom format API for the clipboard before. And also, turns out updating PWA identity when they change their name requires some care to keep users safe. And so that's something we launched in 104 with icon support coming next year.
In 105, Windows Control Overlay, contributed by Microsoft, really helps applications launch a window that feels full and immersive. And that is one of the big assets to installing an application on the web is you lose the Omnibox. You don't need the bookmarks bar, and you don't even need the title bar. You can use all of that space for the functionality of the web app. So the screenshots on this page help show that off. We also continue to improve some of the multi-screen support. And in file system access, we enabled the ability to provide an entire directory for writable access. That's really important for things like Visual Studio Code, other IDEs or editors where you're working with actual files on the file system and you want to be able to read and write to multiple ones. In the device API space, some additional refinement work. And another big item for me is a dialog in the Chrome apps space that warns users that, hey, we are deprecating Chrome apps on Windows, Mac, and Linux. You probably don't need these Chrome apps anymore. There are now PWA equivalents of almost everything. And so users are being shown that prompt, and it's having the desired effect, which is significantly reducing the amount of application launches through that venue and directing them to the normal open web, to PWAs.
Speaking of deprecations, in 106, we made headway on deprecating some of the old storage APIs that were launched circa 2010. There have been multiple iterations of persistent storage. This is an old one that almost nobody is using, but it still has taken time to get rid of it. Perhaps more interestingly, on the serial API side, we've been able to bring your own buffer support, which allows you to just literally bring your own array buffer and avoid costly memory allocations and deallocations when you're doing lots of small reads and writes.
We'll wrap it up with these updates with 108, where we're bringing improvements to the install dialog for PWAs. So previously, there would just be a small dialog with an install button available. And now applications can present text describing what the application is, showing screenshots of what the application could be used for in different modes. And it really brings it towards being more competitive with the other application platforms that are out there. And this is yet another step among many to continue to improve the installation process and what you get for installed applications on the web. I invite everyone to check out the Project Fugu API Showcase. Tom Steiner from our developer relations group put together this resource. It's a great database. You can go in there and select an API, and it'll show you lots of applications that exist today on the web using those. If you go click, for example, I'm a big fan of Web USB. You find lots of really interesting things there, lots of educational tools, robotics, sensors, and things like that. But you can click through on idle detection and everything else. So very good resource to understand the impact that we're having and how it's being deployed out there by web developers. So where are we going from here? You could say, if the goal is to make sure that applications can run on the web, how do you know when you're done? Have you closed that application gap yet? Well, we've been thinking about that, and you can see a lot of our work has been refinements. So let's go back to the data. When we restarted this effort in the Fugu name, we did a lot of analysis from Chrome applications and some of the other application platforms, and we tried to understand usage. And here you see a chart of lots of buckets of capabilities across the x-axis, and you can see the usage on the y-axis, and that's on a log chart. So these things that are peeking out on this chart have substantially more usage than the things on the right of the chart. And we've colored every bar to roughly say, like, yeah, you can pretty much do this capability on the web now in red, and on the right in blue, you can see things that we definitely don't have a solution for yet. And our focus has been primarily on the left, right? On those high utilization APIs. And I can see some people trying to really read out the individual capabilities, and don't do the eye chart test right now, but just get the big idea, which is, we want to focus on high utilization, and we don't want to forget some things that are infrequently used. So, take printing, for example. If you buy a computer, it should be able to print. Even if you only print once every couple of months, your utilization is very low, but it's a very critical capability. And we have other capabilities like that on the web. However, at this point, we are focusing more and more on the refinement of the high usage APIs. So that's what you saw in the recent shipping work, and that is substantially where we're investing. So as we said at the start, Fugu is contributed to by multiple companies and multiple teams within Google even. Josh and I work with a subset of those teams, and in our areas, we're really focusing on files and storage, device APIs, which are having a focus on peripheral access for the upcoming year, the web audio team, which is pushing refinements and performance as it's used across multiple categories that have turned out to be very critical, and pro audio tools, but especially with the pandemic, a lot of communication tools. In the windowing space to really enable those applications that need more capability there. And a lot of effort on the installed experience. When you install to the operating system, surfacing those operating system affordances. There's an additional category of work that we're thinking more and more about as well. And that is, how do permissions appear? And what is the trust model on the web? So when we think about the applications that we would install a decade or two ago, we had a lot of trust on those applications. And if you installed them, for example, onto Windows, they had a lot of access to that device. On the web, we designed a permission model to be very conservative, and it wasn't initially designed for those use cases. However, these days, much of the time people are spending on desktop is in the web. And even if you have a high trust with an application, the permission model doesn't match that high trust. So we are looking for ways to reduce the friction points and increase the usability and the utility of applications by refining the trust model of the web to suit that. So if you have something like Adobe Photoshop on the web or Visual Studio Code, and you trust it and you want to engage with it strongly, how can we adjust that trust model and adjust the permission model so that it's a better experience and we can meet users' needs? So with that, we can wrap up. Josh has to go. He's got another engagement. I have a lot of people, both in the room and online from the team. So I want to take at least 5 minutes for some discussion and Q&A. I'll highlight to everyone. You can see what we've been doing on web.dev Fugu status. But I'd love any questions from people who don't directly contribute to Fugu. Or if any contributors from outside of Google want to use the opportunity to highlight some of the work that they've been doing recently, you can also jump in. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Vince. Have a great discussion, everyone.
All right, I nailed it. We covered everything.
I think you just completely nailed it.
That was perfect.
Anybody want to go back to a web that's just a PDF viewer?
I really.
HTML only.
Oh, all right. Oh, we got a question in the back from Chris. All right, we got a softball coming up.
That's too softball. What are you most excited about for Fugu in the next few years?
My personal excitement is bringing entire categories of applications onto the web that haven't been there before. For TPAC this year, I individually went and did an audit of the usage of the low-level device APIs and to see how that was enabling things. And what did I find? Well, I found a substantial amount of engagement in education, and I just saw so many robotics and other learning tools in that space. So that to me was thrilling, but that was this year. I mean, to a certain degree, that's kind of done, and it's in a polish and refinement stage, maybe a scale it up kind of way. But I think that there's other application categories that are still out there that we're pushing on. So what about in the health and medical space? So you go to these large institutions, they have a lot of these applications that when I look at them, there's no reason they couldn't just be running on the web. And a lot of them are running on very old or legacy systems. They're working on remote or virtualized environments. And I think that's unnecessary, and we can bring them forward. But when you go speak with them, they have real requirements. The web isn't meeting their needs yet. And so I think that we can do that. So I don't think that I have just one, but I can see these areas, right? So in small business point of sale terminal, in things like large organizations like a healthcare system, moving those to the point where they can come online. I'll also highlight in the web audio space, I've been really excited to see how much of the audio creation tools and collaboration tools have been moving online. And we saw that in the pandemic as well. I saw it directly with my children, and they're in school, and now they have to perform individually and separately, each from their own home. But their teacher is able to mix all those contributions together using a web app, and just take all those benefits of the web and the collaboration that it provides. So I think the web has a lot to offer to computing, and there's a lot of these adjacent categories to bring online.
Hey, so I still see a lot of like Electron apps out there, like Discord, for example, even though like I have no idea why it isn't just a PWA. I actually, during your presentation, I just Googled like Discord PWA, and I found like someone wrote a Chrome extension to like inject code into the website to make it installable, and that was like the only thing I could find. And I just kind of wonder like what incentives they might or might not have to make themselves a PWA, or like, do you think that Electron will exist forever? So
yeah, we see diminishing returns for needing Electron, right? I think that for a long time, I think that there will still be a need of Electron for a very small set of people. But this effort, the Fugu effort, has been to identify what are the reasons that they haven't been able to deploy as a website. Can we solve those? And if we do solve them, will people move over? And in many cases, they do. I use, for example, Discord both as the native app and as the PWA. So I use it as the PWA when I just need a chat app. I just need to like check in quick, and I can do it from any computer easily. I still use the native app when I'm at home playing games, because I want the in-game overlay, frankly. And I don't know if we're at that point where we're going to give web pages the ability to overlay, a part of their rendering on top of a game. We might get there, but that's not in the next year or two. I'll put it that way. And the killer feature that I don't think we'll ever get to is pinning the web platform itself. So even if we brought every single capability to Electron, Electron allows you to take all of the Chromium code base and totally freeze it. And that has real value for certain applications that really want to just do a full round of testing and accept no additional change to the application that doesn't go through their own release process. So that's hard to compete with. It's not a feature if you want to browse the web, because we need those updates to provide security. But if you have a self-contained application, that's a valid use case for Electron. So I don't see us ever solving that particular use case.
I believe Penny had their hand raised.
I did, yeah. Just wanted to share things that I've heard from talking to partners around why they're still sustaining Electron apps. A few items: packaging for its own sake. So just users being used to downloading software, strict version control, where they want to be able to have different users use different versions of the software, but they wouldn't want to maintain different live versions of the software on web servers. Full cache control, so being able to do custom cache control rules, and perceptions around limitations of offline support in Service Worker, which I think is largely misconceptions, but nevertheless is a concern that I've heard from developers.
Hey, it's Dom from Sydney here. I think just to add to the Electron thing, I think the other kind of killer thing Electron has is I guess Electron gives you an escape hatch to call any native API you like. And for many developers, that kind of crutch is kind of the get out of jail free card, if that makes sense. I think we've made enormous leaps and bounds on the web platform over the last few years, but I think there's still a bit of a trust gap that's there in terms of being able to deliver APIs in a timely manner to the level of fidelity that might be necessary, or even some great examples here from the Discord discussion: global push to talk, global hotkeys, and the like. Some capabilities that we will likely struggle to, or if ever, be able to deliver onto the web. So I think those are probably some additional developer-oriented reasons that do motivate Electron usage and probably won't go away.
Did I see Riley with their hand raised?
Yeah, and I recognize that we're running a little short on time, so I'll keep it quick. But I think to that question, to kind of coming off of Dom's point about the escape hatch, I think that also goes the other way. That one of the things that we've seen with device APIs, for example, is that people are interested in supporting those APIs in Electron and supporting those APIs in Node. I just got an email yesterday from someone who was planning on implementing Web Bluetooth in Node and had some questions about API behavior to make sure that they were compatible. When we design, APIs like file system access or serial, I think we have a lot of credibility in the API design space for designing really great APIs, and other platforms that are not the web pick up on those ideas. And so, to kind of what Vince said about sometimes using the Discord app and sometimes using the Discord website, it doesn't always matter that the user is using the web HID API on the web. Sometimes they may use it on the web. Sometimes they may use it on an Electron app or in some sort of Node command line tool. But the developer was able to build the same code and have that run in all of those environments because we put the work into standardizing an API for that.
Ben has a hand raised, and this will be the last question.
Oh, it was more of an answer than a question, but I'll put a question at the end of it anyway. Sorry. I'm also really excited about the possibility now of developer-created databases, because SQLite team is about to release SQLite over WebAssembly and access handles. So you can now actually download and use SQLite in the browser, and other database providers have interested in following suit. I think this is a potentially incredible next step for the web. And the question was, isn't that great?
That's great. Thanks, everybody.